Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, bots and cons, to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Scott of VectorSigma.info, and we are in day 87 of our marathon Energon Invitational coverage. I don't know what day it is. I've lost all concept of time. We're back. You probably heard, I don't know whether at this point in time, whether it's going to be one or two episodes of our quote-unquote cursory coverage of the Energon Invitational, which was like
2 episodes, the cursory coverage.
Yeah, exactly. Funny story. So now we want to dive into one of the more specific topics, or topics, really, because Scott, there's been a little bit of talk about the Energon Invitational. Not all of it necessarily rah-rah go EI, I would say.
Yes.
So I have up on the topic list sealed and then general EIQ thoughts about the season, about the event, future stuff, what suggestions we would have. I'm going to go out on a limb and say a lot of counter arguments to other suggestions, quote unquote, people have. I have it in the order sealed and then EI stuff, but we don't have to go in that order. Where would you like to begin, Scott?
The point of this episode is to counter some of the arguments that are going on, what the negativity was about the event, and I just want to kind of explain, given this forum, and given the, I'm not sure some of these people are going to listen, but given this forum and given extensive knowledge of 25 years of TCG experience, as well as running TCG events and just industry knowledge in general, kind of counteracting some of the negativity that's out there by explaining what some of the logistics are of running, hosting, putting on, etc., one of these events, and honestly what our place is in this TCG world, and letting people understand that.
Now, I think I'm going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and I think a lot of the negativity surrounding the event is legitimately people may not realize, and it's just they may be focused immediately on, I didn't like this thing, therefore it should change, and not really necessarily taking the next step or half step to go, well, why was it that way? Like there was a reason why certain things had to play out certain ways, or maybe they didn't have to go that way, but in order to get to whatever this hypothetical individual feels is the promised land would be unreasonable to ask, I think, of whether it's WotC, it's Pastimes, it's whoever. So there were a number of complaints, like I said, whether it was about sealed, it was about the length of the event, it was about some of the logistics for the actual event. Is there a specific one that was really setting your heart on fire, Scott, that you wanted to start with?
No, I mean, I guess I could just start with some general statements.
Sure.
If you want.
Have at it.
This is totally off the top of my head. I didn't write anything down.
Well prepared.
So, I'm well prepared in my head, at least.
I know. I'm just kidding.
So I think the two main things that people need to understand. At its core, this is a trading card. This is not a toy. This is not the IP. This is still, at its core, a trading card game and a trading card game competition. Mm-hmm. So even though a vast number of the community players have come from a non-trading card game background, this is still a trading card. It is going to succeed or fail on the axis of it being a trading card game. There are other trading card games out there that are IP license based, that people just collect the cards. People don't play in tournaments, and there's a lot of them in this game as well.
Yep.
And it's going to sell to those people regardless. But there is an aspect of tournament players, quote unquote, that are within that realm as well, where this is a new experience for them. And that's fine, but you're entering a new world, not that world is coming. Like, that world already exists, and so you're stepping into it.
We made or I don't remember if you said it or I said it, but when we were talking way back about Daring Escape and how we felt that it, and don't worry, this will get to the point, but
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, we had made the comparison that if you sit down to play a game of chess, or rather, I think we said it the other way, you sit down to play poker, and someone takes out a chess set or dumps a bunch of chess pieces on the table, you went in with set expectation A, and the other person is showing up with B. And I feel like a lot of the discussions were along the same lines here, where, yes, a lot of the experienced tournament players, we talked about it for weeks, talking about how long this event is going to be, how it is partially a test of endurance, trying to maintain your mental focus throughout a long day of playing. And sure, it would be great if we could wrap everything up in a few hours, but like that's just not possible with the quantity of players, let alone with, there's a lot online. People are going to be putting in the effort, taking their time to think, making sure that they're making the right plays. Like it's just going to take a long time, and that's why we went in with that expectation. I think setting your expectations, and again, Scott, you'll probably get into this about the logistics of doing some of these things, and by that I mean setting up these events. There are just unavoidable consequences when you talk about trying to manage over 160 people.
Yes.
And that sounds like the final statement, but I think that also prefaces everything we're going to talk about, in that the bottom line is you have 160 plus people. You only have X number of hours to get everything done. And that includes things that are not necessarily related to the main event, which again, we'll touch on in a little bit.
Yeah. And then, so the first part, like you said, is expectations. The second part is, I don't care what pond you think this is. It's a small pond. And you are all big fish in that small pond. All of us.
Right.
And the big pond is an ocean of magic, or of, in this case, magic. And
I think everywhere it's magic. Let's be real.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, yes.
Well, I mean, like I in this case, it was magic. Like at people. So like, there's other card games that are going to be the bigger fish in the bigger ponds, and other events. For now, until we grow, we're always going to be in this situation. We're never going to be the cash cow. I don't care what aspect it is. The other thing you need to understand is this was an invited-only event. So sitting down to play, it's not like you're paying a $30 entry. So the money has already been spent and earned, hopefully positively, before we even sat down to play a game. So I'm not saying that doesn't mean there's an incentive for on their aspect, but you need to realize that there's a cost involved to all of this. There's a cost involved to judging. There's a cost involved to organizing the event. And this was an invited event, so that cost has already been spent and earned already. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're going to your local store and make money on the candy and soda that you're buying. Like the only people that are making money on that candy and soda are probably the Wawa when the event starts, or what's on site. So right. There's no aspect of that, So I mean, even when we were sitting there, we were a small population compared to all the Magic players that were. Like, you just have to understand that.
How many times did we hear mystery draft like 78 or something absurd, which had 8 person draft pods, and there was a gazillion of them, like sheer weight of numbers. Like, let's be realistic about this.
Yeah, this game's been out for a year. I mean, like, you can't. Is it a realistic expectation to hope that your major event has more knowledgeable players or more knowledgeable judging? Sure, but that's not always going to happen. It's just not where people are able to spend their time and effort compared to the giant that is Magic in this one situation and other games in other situations. Because, to be honest with you, like, we're still small. I mean, it's growing at a rapid rate, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, like, I just don't know how anybody I don't know how you can't. Anybody listening to this can't agree to that. I don't know how anybody thinking otherwise can't look within and understand that.
I was going to say let's take it a step back and try and focus it, because I don't know if we're necessarily being clear about what we're trying to describe here. And to me, it's kind of you have to cut everybody involved running this a little bit of slack. Were there issues? I don't think anybody can deny that there were challenges that happened. There were multiple rounds where I'm standing next to somebody who's been screaming judge, and it took a little while for them to get a judge, because and John even posted about this publicly, that there were unfortunately some circumstances that they were short-staffed.
Mm-hmm.
The obvious response is, well, why didn't they overstaff to begin with? And that leads directly into what you're describing, Scott, of there are certain expectations about what can or can't be done that none of us out on the outside looking in are privy to, that at the end of the day, everybody on the other side of that fence, they're a business and they need to stay in business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I hear the arguments of we just need to do more or less, depending on what the individual subject is. But I think people do need to take it. When I say people, I mean just like collectively, the community looking at it, take a step back, think about, okay, well, if I was actually setting this up and I need to make money on it, or I need to make sure that these things are there. Yes, you need to make sure you have a good product. Don't get me wrong. And the product being, you need to put on a strong event. You need to have the appropriate staff and all the other things. But at the same time, there is a balance to it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, how do I say this? I knew these things were going to happen. Once the format was announced as 9 rounds in one day and an LCQ on day 1, and the whole thing was going to happen on day 2, and you're only going to cut to a top 8 on day 3, and it's only a 3-day convention, I knew this was going to happen.
I mean, it's so even if everything went perfect, 9 rounds is going to be minimum 9 hours, because, you need to take down the pairings, put up the pairings, print them out. Let's say that's just the way it is. It was going to be a long day. I was honestly, so we may get into this again later, but I was honestly stunned by the number of people that thought we were either thought we were going to get a lunch/dinner break, or both, or that thought it would necessarily be a good idea. Because we didn't finish up until what, like 10:30, 11 o'clock?
11:30.
So tack on another 2 hours to that.
By the time top 8 was announced.
Yeah, so tack on another 2 hours to that. I mean, yes, yeah. Were there things that could have shortened the day? Yes. Would it have shortened it by like 6 hours?
No.
Probably not. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think that's going to happen. Like I said earlier, I would love. So one of the things that I mentioned offline to a number of people is, like, if you had all 3 days, you didn't run LCQs. Like, day 1 was either limited or constructed, and then day 2 was the other one, and then Sunday was Championship Sunday. Great, you can spread it out a little bit more. But again, that goes back to the initial thing you brought up, Scott, of there are certain things that were expectations set forth of there are going to be LCQs. Well, by definition, they can't run them on like Monday. So there's a very limited amount of hours that you can do it in.
Yes, and the thing to understand is, how do I say this? By the time you see something announced, it has gone through an extensive overview process before it reaches your eyeballs.
Oh, yeah.
To know that that's the format of an event, and to change that is a logistical and legal nightmare.
I think nightmare might be understating it.
So, and unlikely to actually get done within a time frame that would even help the situation at times, depending on when those changes and decisions would be.
Absolutely.
That's all I can say about that. But anytime there's a licensed game involved, that's always going to happen. That all aspects of it have to go through the legal team.
Well, even outside of a licensed game, even if it wasn't, it's still, again, you're trying to get the staffing, you're trying to coordinate with the venue, you're trying to also, you're telling people ahead of time so that they can prepare for what they want to, like what they should expect going in. I mean, for me, there was that one food stand that was really just like pretzels and sodas, I think, nearby. There were 2 bathrooms that were not equidistant, but pretty close. And then out on the exhibitor hall, there were a number of other places to get food. Sure, you couldn't go outside to the Wawa, you couldn't go outside to a restaurant or something, but the reality is you, like you said, you're not reasonable. And we even said this beforehand, like once you're in for the day kind of thing. And that's what you're doing that day. And something I had mentioned to people offline is if that's not your thing, that's fine. You're not a bad person. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just not your thing. And there were plenty of other events that you could have played because clearly there were a number of highly competitive players. Not all of them made Championship Sunday, myself included. So there were plenty of side events that you could play in where it's 4 or 5 rounds or whatever, and you could still be playing against a high level of competition. If that's what you wanted, but you wanted it more bite-sized, I guess would be the best way to put it. There's nothing wrong with playing in a smaller event. There's nothing wrong with playing in a less competitive event or a more competitive. It's just, again, it goes back to what we initially started with of setting expectations. Like, this was going to be a huge, long marathon from the outset. And it's like if you show up to run a marathon and you didn't run like to train at all, I don't know how else to put that.
So I believe 5 out of my 9 rounds went to time. I still peed 6 times on the day. So how did I do that? Like I didn't
Why were you keeping track of how many times you peed?
I'm just remembering back. That's all.
I know it's just a funny thing. So
yeah,
go ahead.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But yeah, I made it a point. Like I'm sure people saw me. I only went to time in round 8. Ironically, against Kyle, a local, quote unquote, in a long mirror, and like we knew it was going to happen. Every other round, it like just play at a quicker pace, kind of thing.
It's not just that; it's that don't sit around waiting for your friends to finish and ask them how they did. Don't like it takes 5. Don't talk to a bunch of people in between rounds. If you got to go. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like
I did that as well. Like I made it people probably saw me both sprinting to the restroom and back, but they also probably saw me sprinting around the hall because it was like, okay, I got back. All right, I got 2 minutes. I want to go check in and say hello to people. I want to see how people did. Oh wait, 35 matches still went to time. I have another 20 minutes.
Exactly.
Inevitably, that was going to happen. Yeah,
you knew it was going to happen.
Of course it was. With that quantity of people, there's no way that someone is not going to time. Like it's, again, like we were talking about in other stuff in the previous show, law of averages. Like there's too many people for it to not happen. Without being too rambling about it, I think that a lot of the logistical concerns or a lot of the complaints as well can kind of be summed up as, yes, like we said, there were problems, there were known issues that can be actionably corrected or addressed on the organization side. That being said, you do need to go in with the expectation that even if they are running seamlessly and it is bang, 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 rounds are getting off on time, everybody knows how to register their deck in sealed, everybody knows how to, do this for after the player meeting. You still need to expect that like it's going to be a long day. Prepare however you personally feel is necessary, whether that's bringing snacks. If your buddy is eliminated, maybe he could do you a favor and run and grab you some grub. Whatever it happens to be. Like you have to take those precautions to, again, like if you show up for an Ironman event and you didn't train, it's probably going to be an unfortunate day.
Yeah, I guess I kind of I understand the complaint about newer players, or
I don't.
know.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I do not understand the complaint about newer players in this event. Full stop. What newer player is showing up to the World Championship?
Well, I don't think that everybody qualified in an apples to apples comparison at their LCQ at their local.
Well, I agree with that, but so I started out with giving everybody, like I said, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and I am perfectly willing to listen to any arguments that people have. I've read a lot of them. I tried to really walk through mentally, is this reasonable? Is it not? Could this have happened instead? Could that be done? And like you were explaining, Scott, the logistics of a lot of these things just dictate how certain things play out. One that I don't actually get is if you're a new player, why is the World Championship catering to you? I'm not saying there shouldn't be new player friendly events, and they're not even necessarily that there shouldn't be new player friendly, air quotes, competitive events. But why is like the capstone event for the year going to modify formats for I don't want to say casual, but a new player that like has no idea? Like that doesn't make sense to me.
I don't think they should modify them. I think they should. I think those players needed to educate themselves more as to what a Apex level TCG event was going to be.
And to their credit, while there were a lot of complaints, I'm sure there are plenty of people who went in, had no idea, and they go, "Oh, okay," and now they'll be prepared for the next time. You just don't hear about those because they're not immediately lighting their torches and picking up their pitchforks.
I talked to a lot of those players that said that it was a huge learning experience for them. Even ones that had certain TCG experiences had said this was on another level.
Yeah.
I'm impressed that no one's saying my opponent didn't let me take back a mistake. Things like that I didn't read, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the other things are comparing it to games that give out plastic tokens as their top 8 prize. Like that's not what this is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just not correct. I mean,
mm-hmm.
Again, this world has existed for close to 25 years, and if you're coming into it now, we welcome you. But there's laws and things that have been established, and you I don't want to say you're behind the 8 ball, but there's a lot of resources out there, including this one, which I hope would help prepare you for what you expected. Everything we said, everything we talked about on the pre-Energon Invitational podcast was correct. Everything.
Yeah.
Bring your food. It's going to be a long day. It's going to be a marathon. All these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I wouldn't prefer to run a 2-day event. It's not like I wouldn't rather do draft instead of sealed. But like I have heard why that occurred. So like we can talk about that if you want. But like it's not like I like doing these things either. But I knew they were going to happen. Prepared for them, and it doesn't bother me. Like it's the world I'm choosing to enter, and it's the world being provided to me by the game that I love.
Right.
So,
and I think that's the difference is that not just the choosing to participate part, which is a big component, but going back to the logistics argument of why things were the structure of the event, the single day, the championship Sunday, the LCQs preceding it happened. You have to go in with an expectation. Like you said, it would be great if this was a week-long event and everybody could take off work and we're playing in Hawaii or something and like, you only play 3 or 4 rounds and then you go hang out with everybody. But the reality is that there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many people to go around from a staff perspective, I mean. Certain things have to happen in a certain sequence. Certain goals and objectives have to be met from whatever side that you choose to examine at a particular moment. And that therefore dictates what happens. Like you said, I would love if They did day one, whatever, day two, whatever other thing, if they're going to do the split format, and then day three championship Sunday. But it just, that sounds like it's, at least outside looking in, that's not the goal. Like they if you want LCQs, again, you can't, if you're going to run them at the event, when else are you going to run them?
Well, I mean, remember, and again, we're in a unique situation where there were plenty of qualifiers, like the players that weren't and wanted to qualify on site and felt like they could, that they need those LCQs. They
Right.
can't. So I don't know what the answer is there, to be honest with you, other than just don't have LCQs. Like, well, I can think of.
There was one thing that we talked about offline that I don't know if you remember or not.
Yeah, do it at a store.
Yeah, do it at a local store. I know other games have done something similar where it's like, okay, so Thursday, you would, obviously in advance contact whatever the largest local supporting store is that's nearby. Say, can you host our LCQs? Run the LCQs there Thursday, qualifying you for Friday's day one, day two, championship Sunday sort of thing. I don't know what the feasibility of it is because, again, like you said, the pond is not, it's growing, but it's not as large as where we'd all like it to be yet. So, again, the reality of the situation is it just may be limited. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't. The suggestions I would have all based in quote reality, whereas I think a lot of the complaint, the basic tenet of all this is, was it perfect? No, but are suggestions I would make feasible given minor changes to things? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Are some of the demands that some players have put on it realistic? Absolutely not.
Right.
Having events at unlicensed conventions, yeah, that's not going to happen.
At least not first party events. Yeah, like
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with running them at those type of conventions, but they're probably going to have to be initiated by those conventions.
Right.
Some of those suggestions, like I saw some of the ones that you're referring to. Anybody on the toy side probably is aware that, like, that's probably not going to happen.
Well, I don't know who was making the complaints, but I mean, I don't. Maybe people don't know that. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if again, it's card players or people that just said, "Oh, I like Transformers," and they're not up on certain things, then they may not be aware of that.
And the other thing I just want to put, polls about why you're here are just stupid. Like, we're here for both reasons, because we love Transformers and we love card games. The fact that people asking people to choose one way or the other is just dumb.
Well, it's also self-selecting in certain ways. Plus, if the one you're referring to is the one I'm thinking of, it was like 300 people the last I saw it, which I don't know how many of those people were actually at the Energon Invitational or would go.
Oh, thank you for bringing up that point. If you weren't at the Energon Invitational, just delete your opinions. I don't care.
Shots fired.
Would be about the event. I just don't. How can you complain about the event? I don't get it. I mean, if you were there and have it talk about what your issues were, I can probably combat most of them. But if you weren't there and you want to complain and say, quote, this is the reason you didn't go. Oh, by the way, I wasn't qualified either. I just want to throw that out there. Like, come on. Like, how far down this rabbit hole can you go? Like, how about if I ask you how many Transformers in the store?
Oh, you're breaking up, Scott. What was that? He's on a tirade and he's breaking up.
How about if I ask you how many times you played in the store this year? How about if I asked you if you went to Gen Con? Like, isn't the answer going to be, like, let's be honest?
I mean, I only caught half of that, so.
Sorry.
You were, I don't know if you're pulling back from the mic or not. You were saying how many times you've been in a store or Origins or went to Origins or Gen Con, but I didn't hear what the punchline for that was.
I bet the answer is 0 to all.
Mm.
So, like, now you just want to keyboard warrior it up on somebody else's post. Like,
Well,
come on.
I think to without going too far down that rabbit hole, I think a lot of that can be summed up in, again, what are the expectations? What are the target audiences for some of these events? So if you were not willing to travel, believe me, I get it. If you had a legitimate real life thing, there were things that came up for even people we knew that were interfering directly with their ability to play at the last second. There are things that happen. So I can understand and I get it. But only you know if it's really the reason or is it an excuse. And you're just, like you're soothing your own ego to some extent if you're unhappy with your results, if you're unhappy with the fact that you didn't qualify, if you're unhappy with X or Y or Q or whatever. It really comes down to, you got to be honest with yourself, and it's okay if this sort of event is not your thing. No one's saying that you can't play the game. No one's saying you can't enjoy it. And no one's really saying that you can't talk about it or do whatever. It's just, again, you have to set the expectations for both yourself and what you're getting yourself into, because otherwise you're setting yourself up for disappointment, really. I mean, I actually had somebody ask me towards the end of the event, like, do you have any fun today? I'm like, and granted, it was at like the very end of the event. Like, literally, we're talking last round. And I was kind of stunned because I said, yeah, I had a blast. I mean, I'm beat. I'm tired. I've been up way too many hours. I'm dehydrated because, I was running my mouth like always. So I was tired, but like, I had a blast. I really enjoyed it. And it was just like, we were building up to this awesome thing. And I almost, like, little secret, I almost was expecting a letdown because I was like so excited about the event, but I wasn't. It was awesome. So it's one of those, again, if you're, a lot of the complaints, just, are you being honest with yourself about the complaint you're laying down? If it is, that's fine. It's how you feel. It's you don't like X, Y, or Z. But if you, for lack of a better way to put it, like, are you making an excuse about something because you didn't like some other thing, like you did poorly or you didn't qualify or whatever, like I said?
Yeah.
I guess the other major complaint that I saw, Scott, a number of people talking about, was sealed. I think as a whole, I mean, there were some fringe ones talking about where it was placed in the event, which I feel it was a little disjointed having it in round 3, but at the end of the day, like, it didn't matter that much. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on the complaints about, I guess, the existence of sealed in this level of event.
I mean, these complaints have existed when it was announced.
Yep.
Discounted it then and gave our opinions then, and they haven't changed.
Right.
The cream rose to the top in the sealed portion, so with or without what people would consider, quote, broken sealed decks.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, other people have already said what their pools were, and I would consider them to be on the level we're complaining about.
Right. I mean, of course, there were the ones that people, I guess, legitimately complain about, quote unquote. There were super rares running around that were stomping people. It happens, but we were talking like a mere handful or 2 handfuls across a 160 person event.
Yes, cards exist. Cards are good. Got it.
And we talked about this offline, and just for the sake of repeating it here, that I'm not sure at this point in time that is statistically different or significant. I can't get this sentence out. I'm sorry. That it's not statistically significant compared to hitting a bad matchup or something like that in constructed. When you're
Correct.
strictly talking about like they opened a bomb super rare, I guess I lose. Well, okay, you could just run into a horrendous matchup in constructed and it happens. Like, what are you going to do about that?
Correct.
And I feel as though on the whole, which I think you had specifically, we were talking about something totally unrelated, but it applies here, Scott, offline, that any given, and I'm paraphrasing here, but any given game, match, event, there's going to be variance to that thing. The goal is to just be consistent enough that you're winning more often. And that'll bear out over this type of event where, yeah, you could run into that weird variance if they open the super rare or you hit a bad matchup. But if you are a strong player, a strong deck builder, that is going to shine through over the long term.
In my opinion, yes.
I mean, that I have yet to play any game where that isn't the case, where other than, strictly like intentionally luck based ones. But if you see the same consistency among certain players, and we saw that in the top 8, like you had mentioned it previously, that a lot of the faces and the names are familiar. There's probably a reason for that.
Exactly. Three of the top 8 also top 8 in
Yep.
These are names you recognize. They're players that put up consistent high finishes. They've talked about the seal decks.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, at this stage, again, going back to the small pond comparison or description, that is there variance? Yeah, it's a card game. It's sealed. Okay, there's variance in the stuff you open as well as the variance within the game, and or constructed there's matchups. But I know for me personally, and I mentioned it on previous shows, that all of the losses I took on the day were on me. They were 100% on me. I messed up. I built my deck wrong. I chose the wrong decision tree. I made the incorrect play. I can correct those, like you said, trying to get better, and that there is a gap currently of where my skill level is versus where it could be. And until I can close that gap, I mean, yeah, variance happens, but I'm going to concern myself with what I can address. And right now, I personally feel my own skill level needs enough work that I could get to another level without having to worry about whether I hit the right matchups or whatever. Like, there are bad matchups that I should be winning because I should be playing better is the bottom line. And I think that also holds true for sealed, where if I built my deck better, I would have put myself in a position to win. Maybe I still would have lost, but I don't know until I at least handle the stuff that I can address.
I mean, I agonize over changing 2 to 4 cards in my 40 card constructed deck constantly in the week leading up to an event, the days leading up to an event. Should I play this? Should I change it? So you have less time to agonize over a smaller. So every single one of those every single one of those characters makes a difference. If you're going to sit here, person listening, telling me, and person complaining that you built your seal deck 100% correctly, given no ability to change it whatsoever, I'm sorry, likely.
I mean, there is the possibility that this hypothetical fictional person did do that. And maybe that's true.
Games, correct?
I mean, like, it's possible. Like, maybe you hypothetical person really did just get hosed. Like, it's not impossible. It's just improbable.
The reason why limited is good, especially in the game. So Transformers is a very decision-based game. There are literally infinite decisions to to be made every single turn that you can possibly make. I mean, obviously there's it's a high mathematical number of decisions you can actually make. What character you're going to flip, what play, where you're going to attack, etc.
Yep.
In any one given turn. And that's with a deck that you supposedly know and part of,
right?
Unless you decide on it the day before.
Well, who does that?
Right.
That's wild.
And if you take that aspect away and tell somebody now you need to actually be able to make these decisions more on the fly, using characters you wouldn't normally use, using cards you wouldn't normally use, evaluate cards and combat icons you would not normally use, etc. on the fly, given a random pool of cards, that is a much higher skill game. And everything you put into evaluating cards and building decks should apply at a much smaller level in any sealed. Now, see, Drew is on record as saying that he feels draft is too high of a to have an event like this.
Yeah, he said that recently, but a few times before, if I recall correctly.
For those of you that would rather have draft, I won't even finish the statement, but there would be a small, the pond would be significantly smaller as to how that skill gap would wind up in that favor.
Yeah.
Let alone the logistics. The logistics of it, I think, could actually be accomplished, especially if it was a 2-day event or something like that. But the logistics are not the issue.
Yeah.
It's the skill gap would be much higher.
Yeah.
And that's been proven and is on the record. So that's why they want limited. They want limited because they understand that ability to evaluate the game quickly and efficiently is the point of the game. Yes, we have more time. Yes, we have access to every single super rare and rare under the sun. So like you can build efficient constructed decks easier by having access to every single card that's out there, but not everybody can. I've heard players say, like, I only bought a box of cards or something like that, so this is what I built. Like, essentially just think of yourself as being that player at all times when you're playing limited. Like, this is all you have. Like, this is what you got. So you have to play, and the guy next to you, that's all they have.
Yeah.
So make the best, on the fly, make the best decision you can, and you're not going to figure it out. That's why limited is good.
I think it also is worth bringing up, like, a lot of people tend to focus on the variance, the luck aspect of limited in general, but especially sealed. But the fact that there are practicable skills, by definition, you can take a lesson from your first sealed deck and apply it to your second, and then from your second to your third, you are building a skill set with that format. Clearly, there's skill involved. Like, there are things that can be learned. There are tools that can be brought forward. It's a tough argument for me to make because personally, I can't stand sealed. I don't like limited in general. I don't like playing sealed. I prefer that I can just run a gazillion reps with a deck because I like it. I don't care if like in other games, I play eternal formats for Magic players will know, but they're non-rotating where every card is legal or a huge chunk of the card pool is legal. And therefore, like, you could legitimately play the same deck, changing one or two cards when new sets come out kind of thing, or meta shifts forever. That's for me where I'd like to play. I would love to just play the same thing and practice the hell out of it. So, as you'd imagine, compare that to sealed, where it's like, nope, here's your stuff. Have fun. I prefer not to, but I can recognize where the skill gap lies and what is actually entailed by playing sealed. I may not like it, but I can respect it.
And that's fine. If they're different, they're different skills, but at the same time, they're two sides of the same coin. That's what.
I agree. My argument is that if you, dear listener or viewer out there, are in the same boat and you don't like sealed, take a step back and you can at least appreciate it for what it is. And yes, would I prefer draft? Of course. But like Scott was saying, whether it's logistics or skill gap, like there are a bunch of other things that come into the conversation very quickly when you start talking about draft.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm trying to think if there were any other topics. I'm checking my notes real quick about things that had come up for complaints about the EI in general, and I think a lot of them we've touched upon, whether it's the limited stuff, the tournament length, the sheer logistics, whether it comes to staff or the food, the restrooms, the whatever. And again, I think it all comes back to your own personal expectations looking at the event, looking at each of these facets of the event, where if you're I don't know what was going through people's heads, and that's not a what were they possibly thinking, they're crazy sort of thing. It's just like, what was going through your, like, what did you person out there think was going to happen when they announced that it was going to be a split format, it was going to be 9 rounds, it was all going to be done in one day, and then Championship Sunday with LC? Like, what did you anticipate? And again, there's no way you can say that things cannot be improved from what they were at the EI. There's always ways to improve on all of these fronts. Mm-hmm. But it's for everybody, not just, hey, you guys organizing it, go change all these things to suit my demands. It may be you have to bend, you listener, you might have to bend a little bit to conform to what the standard is.
Yeah, I agree.
Was there anything else that stood out to you, Scott, that you remember from the myriad, the plethora, the legion of different threads on this?
I heard someone saying that they expected like it would be 50 to 55 minutes between, like, as a total for rounds, being closer to 75 or 80, and that's what made the tournament longer. Again, we said this was going to happen. Right. Once the tiebreaker rules were in place, this game is a game of decisions. Many, many, many different decisions, and a lot of things hinge on the decisions. So people, by nature, do not play the fastest in the world.
Of course. And I think a number of people also, if there was that high quantity of newer players, not necessarily new to the game, although that could be true, also people new to this level of competition, that it's, again, just another thing of getting acclimated to how things operate. It's going to slow you down, or, in round 8 at 10 o'clock at night, you're getting slowed down.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, the one big thing I don't know that I mean, people call me Larry David all the time. I don't know that there aren't many people in life who complain more than I do. Mm-hmm. And I'm being put in a position where, like, I'm defending and not complaining about things because the complaints that people are putting out there are just so unrealistic that they're able to be fixed. So, yeah, because it just doesn't make logistical sense for those solutions to exist.
And I get the argument of, to some extent, from the person complaining of, that's not my problem, that's your problem, organizer, to accommodate these things. Like, these should be, if they're saying that whatever it is a base level expectation, like, I kind of get that to some extent, but again, a lot of it is, okay, is it really reasonable? Because I can't think of a specific example where it would fall on one side or the other, except all of the ones that I'm thinking of are falling on the side of, like, no, there's just no reasonable way to accommodate whatever it is that you're requesting.
Yeah, like the event should be held at XYZ other convention, or shouldn't be held here, whatever. That's an unrealistic expectation. These tournament organizers are doing double and triple duty, and again, we're the tributary of the giant ocean that's out there, leading to the pond. That's all we are in right now, and so,
right.
I mean, Do I think that maybe this should be held at a Magic only event?
I was about to say
I
maybe tacking
could make
on
that
to some of those.
I could make that I could make that argument, but again, that may not be this tournament argument. Something else you have to keep.
Right.
That's usually run tournament, and that's not how this game is being run. So there's that aspect. Well,
a lot of it is I can understand the complaints from the perspective of these are the things I didn't like. But there's a lot of unknown, either known unknowns or unknown unknowns as far as what's on the pastimes end, what's on the WotC end, and what's in the ballpark for this could happen. Whether it's, like you said, at piggybacking off of a Magic event or going to whatever convention or hosting an independent Transformers thing just of its own accord. There's limitations as to what can happen, and only those parties really know all the numbers to drive those decisions.
Yeah, and the other thing is you have to understand that to be a judge or to be an organizer means you don't play.
Yeah,
and I can't sympathize because I always want to play.
Yeah.
So I could never understand, even in Magic, when they compensate you, or in other games. I never understood why you'd want to be on that side of the fence.
And it's often a thankless job.
Yeah.
And people are always, they're yelling for you, and then in some cases yelling at you.
And I think the most important use of there is job.
Yeah.
It's a job.
Right.
Those people are being paid, or they're being given a free trip to, I don't even know what they're doing at that point. They don't have time to walk around the convention. Like, I don't know what, like, you're even being, like, I don't even know how you're even being
Yeah, a lot of at least when I was playing Magic, a lot of the judges that I knew were often players that had kind of given up on the dream, so to speak, of, okay, I can't, at the stage of my life, or, whatever their position was, they did not want to or could not go to the quote-unquote next level, the Pro Tour, whatever. So then they still wanted to hang out and play Magic or be around Magic, so they would judge. We're only a year in. How many people are willing to, quote-unquote, give up on the dream of going to the EI right now to then go to the EI and help run it?
Yeah.
Like, to have, like, really knowledgeable judges, you need to have those people that are that emotionally and cognitively invested in the game and be willing to not play it. Like, that seems like a tall order to fill right now.
It's a tall order to fill no matter when. And I respect those people highly that are doing this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, are there I think a lot of the, quote, judging complaints come down to what I would consider logistical judging. Like, it was procedural, and I had time on the clock. A very, very simple. A lot of it was about end-of-term procedures and the judges understanding them correctly. Like, I get that.
Yeah.
And maybe the amount of time that it took for somebody to show up to a table, I get that. That was part of the lack of staff thing. But everything else, like, and I don't know of any of these, like, these super complicated rulings or anything like that. Like, I don't know how those might have if those went down or anything like that. But, like, again, it's going to be hard to find those people because I don't think we've reached, like you said, I don't think we've reached the stage yet where there's people that are that knowledgeable choosing to play.
Yeah. And we'll eventually get there as the game, you mentioned multiple times that the game is growing, and that by virtue of it, just the life cycle of these sort of things, we'll get there. But we're not there yet, so it's very much we have to work with what we have.
And to caveat that, I don't want this to come across as they bit off more they can chew, or too early for this, or any of that kind of stuff. Don't think that's the case. But just know that this is an issue, and you're dealing with a much smaller staff for some of this, because it just is what it is. Like, growing, but we're never going to reach that level of Magic. So or some of the other games, it's just not going to happen. So and I don't know how certain rulings are, and I think in some of those other games there are procedural things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very easy to also grass is greener.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these things, because I played some of these other games that, well, people weren't name dropping the game specifically, but that I guess featured some of the things that are being requested, and like for example, a lunch break, dinner break. Yeah, it did not work out well in the games where that happened. It was a mess, and made events that should have been done much earlier. It's not just the time involved in the break itself. Like it has ripple effects throughout the event as a result. For lack of a better way to put it, sometimes you just got to be careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. At the end of the day, again, not to beat the dead horse, but I think it's just, yes, Scott, and if I'm not didn't hear you correctly, correct me, but we both acknowledge and recognize that there were things that could be fixed on the organizational side. There are things that will be fixed on the organizational side. Like they had more judges, they didn't show up, or whatever happened. That'll presumably be corrected. They're not going to go, oh, well, we got by with less, so we're going to, like they're going to have more staff the next time. Hopefully. There were other, again, like you said, the end of match procedures or certain things. I hope that they get a bullhorn or a better PA system or multiple people doing a shout chain or something for like the player meetings and stuff.
Sure.
Something like there are actionable things that can be fixed, but there are also things that, like you said, Scott, that are being requested that if they're not, they might not be realistic now, and they may never be realistic depending on what the different request is.
Yeah, and I'm having conversations with all the parties, but I'll just tell you how I feel about certain things. Like, for example, I'm trying to do the math in my head real quick. How long is 2,000? How long is 2,000 minutes?
What?
I'm just trying to think. It's too
Scott,
long.
I'm on my computer here. We'll do.
It would take over.
2,000 divided by 60 is 33.
Yeah.
I have a calculator.
So I can register a sealed deck in less than 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
if you want me to come in on Friday and register 200 sealed decks, if you open all the packs, I'm sure it will take me 10 minutes. So if you want me to register a sealed deck and stick them in a corner and then hand them out during that portion, I'm more than willing to, for example, so that we don't have to have explaining this procedure that took way too long to too many players that weren't used to.
Yeah, example. that was an ordeal. I'm not gonna lie.
Like I heard people suggest it should be done during the player meeting. I wouldn't even do that. Like I'm willing, and I'm sure you would do it. I'm sure other players that are used to registering decks would be willing to help out with doing that ahead, as long as.
To be honest, I was half expecting that coming in because in other events I played, the packs were all opened and stamped ahead of time, so that it was. And I still have some of those cards from those other events because I thought it was cool that it's, I day 2'd this event and I have a stamped card to prove it.
Yeah, but that's more for draft.
I know. I agree, but it was the point of I almost expected it exactly what you're describing to have happened already.
Yeah, my point is some of these logistical things as a player I am more than willing to assist with. Mm-hmm. Like that don't require me to not play in the event. But if you we just sat around for a lot of long. If you want, I could have easily helped register sealed decks. Like that wouldn't have been a problem at all,
right,
ahead of time. And then do the same thing, hand them out to pass them across and make sure, have the check to make sure that the deck is legitimate and that we didn't screw up registering them. whoever me, whoever else the other players that do that. But like we would save 45 minutes right there. Like there's just little things that I think can be done that if you ask the community to help, are more than willing to assist. So I mean that these are little things that I'm going to suggest.
I mean, to be fair, I think it may be fewer numbers than you might think would be willing to spend an entire night doing that. But maybe we'll get lucky, and I'm underestimating people's propensity to crack packs.
I mean, I just said it would take me alone a while, but like if there was 10 of us,
oh yeah,
3 hours like total for the entire event.
Right.
Like, again, if this is what it takes, like I'm willing to assist. Like I'm not just saying go do this. Like
yeah.
I think that's the point. Is if there are complaints out there and there's a better way to fix it, and we can assist with doing it, given again the logistical inability for them to do it on their own.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely falls very much in the category of like, I don't know what their limitations are on this sort of thing as to why it didn't happen. They didn't think they needed to, whatever, but that plays definitely into there's unknown information in the public discourse about why certain things happened the way they did.
Yeah, because the tournament rules say to do it. I mean, it doesn't mean that we can't do what I just said.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that specifically. I was just kind of broad sweeping all the complaints.
Yeah, the main key to all this is, again, like you said, what were your expectations going in? Do you understand the logistics of putting on these type of events? Do you understand that ultimately in the world of trading games, we are a small pond?
I mean, one other thing we didn't say before, but you had kind of alluded to it, that this is kind of how things run in card tournaments for TCGs and CCGs. Like, believe me, there are plenty of people who brought up these exact complaints and similar ones and other ones that weren't brought up for as many years as they've been doing these.
Mm-hmm.
They have certainly evolved over time. It is not that everybody loves this format and we all want to play 45 hours straight until our eyes bleed. Like, it's just sometimes that's how things shape up because you need to conform to whatever the requirements are from WotC or your venue or your tournament organizer or whatever. You know, these are the most efficient ways within the realm of, like we said, there were specific challenges for this event that could be remediated going forward.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
But I think that's a lot of words about a lot of negative stuff. Anything else you wanted to add, Scott? Any other ones that we didn't touch on, or any other suggestions you want to throw out there, or anything along those lines or other lines?
No, again, I'm not trying to legitimize or apologize for what I consider to be bad behavior. It's just that this isn't my first rodeo, and I understand the logistical complications that occur from these events and from not necessarily being the big kid on the block. I ever since I stopped playing Magic, I knew I wasn't the big kid on the block.
Yep.
I was fortunate that some of the other games we played over the years had their own events, and so again, we were the only kid on the block in that situation at that time. But it wasn't always that way.
Right.
And so we have to hope that as a community we can grow, and that the tournament community can grow to where that is the case. Could have our
it's not necessarily that you need to displace Magic and take the throne back.
No.
It's just, are you self-sustaining enough? Are you a big enough kid to ride this ride? And you can justify a Grand Prix where it's only Transformers, whatever they would call that. sort of thing.
Yeah, but I can tell you, having researched it, it's going to take a much larger, dedicated tournament player base to make that a.
Oh, of course. I mean, that may be the goal. We didn't really talk about how close we are to it. That's subject for another day. I think that'll do it. It's been a long recording evening. So, as always, if anybody has any feedback or anything, hit us up. I know this one was very much dwelling on certain negative things. I hope that doesn't put anybody in a sour mood, because overall we were I know I had a lot of fun at the event. You said it before earlier, Scott, that you thought overall everything was thumbs up.
Yeah, definitely.
So that'll kind of do it for now. We're going to keep talking about the EI for a while. Definitely check out vectorsigma.info and, all the usual spots for other coverage that we're going to have. There's going to be a lot. So without much further ado, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and please tune in next time for more Tech Talk.